Good evening, members, officers, visitors and members of the public. My name is Councillor Andy Booth and I will be presiding over this evening's Swale Borough Council Planning Committee meeting. Please note that the meeting is being recorded and that staff throughout the building will be wearing body-worn cameras within the premises. Data captured during these meetings will be processed and retained in accordance with the Council's data retention policy, and the meeting recording may be published on the Council's website. Can I ask at this stage that all members and visitors, guests, turn their mobile devices to silent, Councillor MacDonald, as it has a habit of playing up with the internal mic system. Just like that. You ready? Good, yeah, good. Agenda item 1, this is the emergency evacuation procedure. We are not expecting to hear the fire bell this evening. If we do hear it, it will be for real, and everybody will be asked to leave this chamber through exit on the left or the right. Make your way down to the car park, aided by Democratic Services and other officers present this evening. Under no circumstances are you to use the lift. Assemble in the car park. Everybody will be told there will be a roll call. If the building is safe then to return, we will return to it. If not, we'll have an early night. So let's keep our fingers crossed. Members must consider each application and everything that is said in the meeting concerning that application and make their decision based solely on their planning judgment of the information available to them. Following a decision by members this evening, delegated authority is given to the planning officer to make the decision notice. Planning permission is neither granted or refused until that decision notice has been issued. Any member of the council who is not a member of the planning committee may attend as a visiting member and may speak, having given prior notification. Such visiting members may of course include ward members, and whilst visiting members can speak on an application, they are not permitted to vote. Any member acting as a substitute on the planning committee must have undertaken the appropriate planning training before doing so. A polite reminder, members must remain in the meeting for the whole time that each agenda item is being debated. If they leave during that time, they will be prohibited from voting on that item. I'd like to welcome our visiting public speakers this evening and remind you that you have 3 minutes to speak. So I hope you've all practiced. This is the chair you'll be sitting in, and in front of you is a microphone like this. We'll run through the procedures, but it's fairly easy. You'll get a 30-second beep when you have 30 seconds left. You'll get a beep as a reminder. Thank you. Agenda item number 2, apologies for absence and substitutes, please, Philippa.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies have been received from Councillor Kieran Golding and from Councillor Elliot Jays. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 3, this is for me to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of March 2026, minute number 786 to 791 as a correct record of that meeting. Members that were present at that meeting, are you happy for me to sign them? Thank you very much. I'll do so during this meeting. Agenda item number 4, this is declarations of interest. Firstly, do any members have a disclosable pecuniary interest they need to declare? And secondly, do any members have a disclosable non-pecuniary interest? No, thank you very much. At this point, I'd like to remind the meeting that Where it is possible, a fair-minded and informed observer, having considered the facts, would conclude that there was a real possibility that a member might be predetermined or biased on any agenda item. The member should declare this possibility and then leave the room whilst that item is being considered. Everybody clear? Good. Okay, at my behest, I'm going to change the agenda around slightly. We still have 8 items, but I'm moving item number 5 in between 7 and 8. Okay. So we now move on to part B, the report for the planning committee to decide. First item we then come to will be item 6. This is 2.1 25-50 1495 Oscar Uniform Tango outline. Land at Perry Court, London Road, Faversham, Kent. Mike Echo 13 8 Yankee Alpha. Can we first please have an update and any screen work from the officer, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Evening, members. Chairman, we have a tabled update for this item. We've received two correspondences from Ospringe Parish Council and Faversham Town Council since the report was finalised. So those comments are largely, to be fair, as they were submitted to us, but summarised. There's also, at the end of that document in front of you, a slight amendment to condition 7, as suggested by me. Would you like me to present and then give you time?
What I'll do, if it's okay, members, has everybody got a copy of that? Have you read it, or would you like 5 minutes? Read it? Understood it? Right, we'll carry on, please. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chairman. So I'll just present the presentation that I've got available. 2 seconds. So members will be able to see that now. So this is an application for a mixed-use residential and commercial development at Perry Court in Faversham. This is the site outline in red. As you can see there, it spurs off of Tettenhall Way at the Perry Court estate, which is allocated. Here is just a red line outline on an aerial map, just to give you an idea of kind of the lay of the land and kind of the previous use of the site in the context of the other residential uses around it. This is just a very brief drawing just to show that kind of main access. So all matters reserved on this outline application other than that access into the site. This is the development framework plan for the site. So you can see that purple area is where the commercial development would go, the yellow area where the residential element would go, and then the green areas are where the open space would be located. And this is just an illustrative master plan as to how the site could be laid out. So you've kind of got that grey part of the site to the east, which is where the commercial is, and then the residential around it, alongside the open space and the bund as well that runs along the southern edge. There's just a few photos of the site. Members kind of, I imagine, will be aware, but just for your reference, this is the access into the site from Tettenhall Way. Just another view of it, effectively, from that red arrow angle. Again, kind of pointing towards where the commercial area would be. These are just to highlight kind of the lack of intervisibility, I suppose, from the Ashford Road to the east. Again, there showing the Audi in the background on the site. This is just showing it from that angle where the red is, just down the site. The site's slightly different now. having been there more recently than this photo was taken. It was most recently, I think, used as like a pumpkin farm or something. So there's kind of the debris left from that. And then here is just a view from that kind of western edge of the site, and you can see those trees along the M2 to the east, well, to the right. For the reasons set out in the report, the application is recommended for grant subject to conditions and section 106. Thank you.
Splendid. Thank you very much, Andy. Right, members, we have 2 speakers. Can I first call Town Councillor Rob Crayford, please, representing Faversham Town Council. Rob, can you hear us? You're on mute if you can. Just confirm. Rob, can you hear us? Okay. We can't hear you. We saw your nice yellow hand, but can you turn your microphone on, or else your speech may be somewhat limited? Philippa, can you send him a message?
It's showing that his microphone is on, so I can't.
Yeah, Rob, do you want to log off respectfully and then come back in? But there is clearly a problem with your micro. He's gone. Good. Just hold fire, members. Not good that he's gone, but good that he's going to reboot.
Can you hear me now, Chair?
No, not at all. Yes, of course we can. Yeah. That's perfect. Soon as you're ready, Rob, and I shut up, your 3 minutes will start, and you'll, as I say, you'll hear when you have 30 seconds left. The time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Faversham Town Council objections to this application fall into 2 clear parts. Firstly, the lack of alignment with our overall active travel ambitions, and secondly, the missed opportunities to deliver meaningful infrastructure. On the first point, this application makes no reference to how this development contributes to Faversham's ambition of being a walking and cycling town. There is no mention of our local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, no reference to the Parish List of Town report approved by Swale Borough Council, and no clear alignment with the National Planning Policy Framework, which places strong emphasis on sustainable transport. This is a significant omission. As a town council, we have a clear ambition about the direction we want to take, encouraging active travel, reducing reliance on cars, and improving connectivity across our town. Developments on this scale should be contributing to these goals, not ignoring them. On the second point, there's a clear missed opportunity within this application. There's a lack of strong, safe, and accessible link for pedestrians and cyclists into Faversham town centre and to the railway station, and this is a major concern. The connection via public right-of-way, ZF18, is especially important, yet it has not been properly addressed. So basically, if this development, to walk from this development to town, is problematic, and it's not really that accessible. Without these connections, we risk creating a development that is isolating and car dependent rather than integrated and sustainable. If this application is approved, it must be conditional on addressing these issues. One of the routes into town is via Abbey School, and there must be Section 106 money allocated to improve this crossing. There's already work started by Faversham Town Council and Kent County Council to improve this, and Section 106 money must be invested to improve this accessibility. This is not about opposing development, it's about ensuring that development works for the future in Faversham and is sustainable. If we are serious about active travel, about public health, and about reducing congestion, then we must be consistent. and that means expecting developments like this to play their part. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak.
Councillor Crayford, thank you very much indeed. Can we now have, please, Mr. Owen James representing the applicant? Good evening, Mr. Jones. Good evening. That's your chair, that's your microphone. When you are comfortable and ready, if you like to press the button, then your 3 minutes will commence.
Good evening. I am appearing on behalf of Hallam Land, the applicant. Hallam Land secured outline planning permission for a mixed-use development in 2016, pursuant to policy MU7 of the local plan. That comprised a mix of uses: housing, retail, a care home, hotel and office use. Whilst there is by now a successful community at Perry Court, the application site is the single remaining part of the allocation. Despite diligently marketing that land for almost 10 years, it has not been possible to dispose of it. You will appreciate that the employment land market is very different now to when the local plan was being conceived. What little evidence of demand for new offices that did exist has almost now entirely ceased following the pandemic. Consequently, the prospect of developing the employment land in the strict terms of the local plan has now diminished. That is also evident from the various employment studies commissioned by the Council for its new local plan. That acknowledges it is very unlikely that the office uses will be realised. Hallam are conscious of the need to complete Perry Court and have consulted local residents on how that could be realised. We are now proposing to adjust the development to provide an additional element of housing and a wider range of commercial uses under what is termed Use Class E, which reflects the marketing interest that does exist. The application site is within the settlement boundary and there is a presumption in favour of its development. It is not subject to restrictive countryside policies. Policy MU7 already allows for alternative uses to be proposed in these prevailing circumstances. Moreover, there is an identified need for more housing in the borough, and the proposed development will make a valuable contribution to addressing this. The officer's report provides both a careful and cogent analysis of the scheme. Mr. Gambrell's conclusions are that its benefits outweigh its harms, and that includes planning obligations in favour of the local highway authority for active travel and including the potential crossing of the A2. The planning balance leans decisively towards the grant of planning permission. I respectfully invite you to resolve in favour of Mr. Gambrell's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jones. For the benefit of our visitors this evening, part of the protocol of what we're now going to hopefully get involved with is a discussion and questions in relation to applications. So it needs to be proposed in favour of the officer's recommendation by me, and then hopefully that's seconded by a member. If it is, then we can start the process. Just to let you know, just because I'm proposing it and it is hopefully seconded, that does not indicate the way I may vote at the end of this debate and discussion. So I formally move officer recommendation to approve, reference number 25-5014-95-out. Is that seconded? Councillor Clark, thank you very much. Before we get into questions, members, and we're looking particularly at questions, I'd like to bring to your attention, because I think it's really important, on page 26 and 27, the planning history This is starting 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, 2.5 and 2.6, which are the previous applications. And it is detailed there whether they were granted or withdrawn. So just look at that, or refused in one instance, please. Secondly, where am I? Paragraph 7.2.3. 7.2.3, this is under principle. I think when you look at, in particular, point 2 on there, where it says any adverse impacts on doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits, making effective use of land, securing well-designed, it's a comment that I don't really want to go through in detail when we're considering the NPPF. The statement is there for everybody to read. Right. Any questions? Yes, please. Julian.
Thank you, Chairman. Looking at paragraph 5.21, Southern Water, it says the development site is not located within Southern Water's statutory area for water supply or wastewater drainage services. There's insufficient capacity in the foul network. And at 7.15.10, it states that in order to ensure the proposals don't overwhelm the existing system, a condition is recommended securing details of the foul water arrangements proposed on site prior to commencement of each phase. This would enable Southern Water to plan the delivery of any required improvements, and I see there's a condition on foul drainage at condition 19. I just wondered if any discussions have been held with Southern Water regarding the practicalities of dealing with foul water. What network reinforcement or sewer upgrades are they planning, given that their existing sewer pipe infrastructure and pumping stations haven't been upgraded for the past 50 years, as I understand it? And how will they prevent the internal sewer flooding of properties further downstream, as has happened in that broader area in recent years? So what happens if they say the system can't cope and an upgrade for that area is not in their asset management plan? Then on water supply, again, it's not within Southern Water's statutory area, but that doesn't seem to be addressed in conditions at all. I can't see any condition that requires a water utility to demonstrate that they can connect an adequate supply. My next point at 7.21.10, my understanding here is that the as we heard from the applicant, the quantum of employment floor space allocated at the site has not been attractive to industrial operators, and the same goes for the quantum of office space. So it's stated the proposals would instead make a valuable contribution in addressing the unmet housing need, alongside a smaller quantum of commercial floor space that reflects the nature of interest received. I wondered here what evidence there is that there's a demand even for this smaller area of commercial space, because I'm aware that units at Brogdale nearby remain empty. And then my final point's just a quick one on condition 2, time limit for reserve matters. Application for approval must be made within 3 years for any phase comprising residential development, but it's 5 years for non-residential. I just wondered why that period was so much longer for commercial. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Speed. Andy, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Speed. In terms of the Southern Water comments, we've obviously consulted them on the application. They've, although originally they suggested they weren't the wastewater provider for the area, they are the wastewater provider for the area, and that was confirmed by them. The condition, obviously, that we've sought to impose effectively requires any future developer to provide details of, I don't know, the layout, for instance, of the development and the quantum of dwellings or extra care units or employment that they're intending to bring forward. Any future developer has the right to connect. That's under the Water Industry Act. Southern Water, or whoever it is that is the wastewater provider, is required to provide the capacity to connect in terms of network reinforcement. So at this stage, being an outline application, we don't necessarily have the detail of what those network reinforcements would entail, but that is something that would be borne out of the kind of detailed stage later on when the consent potentially has been approved and they're able to then plan for the incoming quantum of housing and employment development. On water supply, there's no condition because there's a requirement for the provider to provide supply to any future development. So it's not something that the planning authority would get involved in terms of supply, because that's a statutory process that's separate from the local authority. In terms of your question regarding the marketing and employment land review, the employment land review that was carried out by the council a few years ago now, and it's set out in the report, confirmed that the quantum of office space that had originally been allocated on this site was very unlikely to come forward. The marketing evidence reinforces that, and the uses, the smaller quantum of use is actually, in terms of like the office and like industrial, that type of thing, one of the specific recommendations of the employment land review was that you look at kind of a smaller quantum that could cater for the kind of walk to work type market. But also the other uses have been borne out of kind of the marketing work that's been carried out by the applicant. So that's kind of garnered, although the applicant kind of advertised the site for the Class E uses that the site is allocated for, it did also generate other interest from other kind of commercial operators alongside that, which has then informed the makeup of the application. And in terms of the 5 years for non-residential, the previous application required reserved matters to be approved within 3 years for both the residential and employment. So the employment on this site's previously been approved, but kind of as set out in the report and as noted, by the absence of any employment on that site, it didn't come forward within that time frame. So the 5 years has been suggested in condition 2 in order to enable that non-residential development to come forward over a longer time frame, taking into account the experience we had with the previous application that was approved. Thank you.
Happy, Councillor Speed?
If I could just come back on that briefly, I mean, the fact that you're extending that period to 5 years does seem to me to rather back up my point that maybe there isn't that demand, because that I haven't seen anything that actually demonstrates that. And on the question of Southern Water, I know they have a duty to supply, but we know they're short of money. If this is not in their asset management plan, my concern is that they'll connect it up to something that's already at capacity, and we know we have had internal sewerage flooding in that broader area, and I'm just a bit concerned that they'll just connect up to an already overloaded system, and we could see some issues there. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Speed. Councillor Kavanagh, please.
Thank you, Chairman. My concern is page 28, 3.4. Access into the site would be via Tettenhall Way. Now, having a look on Google Maps, some of it appears to be block paving. I know from experience close to me that often doesn't stay in good condition for long. I'm concerned about, is the road capable of carrying heavy construction vehicles? Is it adopted? And if the extra heavy vehicles for the construction work damage the road, could we not have a condition to have the road resurfaced? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Andy, please.
The access from Tettenhall Way is tarmac. So there's a part that extends round, which serves houses. That's block paving. But the part that this site would rely on is tarmac, hard surface. The intention is for KCC to adopt Tettenhall Way. That's going through a separate kind of legislative process at the moment. The original, Tettenhall Way, as originally designed, when it was approved under the 2015 application, was designed to take the full quantum of employment floor space. So the movements associated with the development that's under consideration this evening don't exceed what had originally been anticipated for the employment floor space. So it's always been designed to accommodate, that quantum of development. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Winkless, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm also looking at page 27 here, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, 2.5, where outline, if I read it correctly, basically was granted March 2017, March 2019, etc. Granted 2020. My concerns are, with the previous history of this site, if we was to refuse this tonight, we would have weak grounds, possibly, I use the words possibly, to defend it. So that's my point at the moment. Thank you.
Are you looking to refuse it, Councillor Winkless?
I'm not purposely looking at refusing it. I'm just basically going through that, which indicates to me
Fabulous.
we may have weak grounds to defend it at appeal.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I didn't want you to limit your own conversation. Councillor MacDonald, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was looking at the extra sheet that we've got with the comments from, I know it's an outline application, but Ospringe Parish Council got a few things about 106 money. And of course, when it comes to a detailed situation, it's not really a thing for outline, but it comes in with the detail. So I think generally we would be very keen to see that developers do actually come up with the wherewithal for 106 money. So thank you.
I see no more hands. I do. Councillor Speed.
Thanks for letting me come back, Chairman. I'm still a bit concerned about this point that the in condition 2 that the application for approval of reserved matters must be made no later than 3 years for residential and 5 years for non-residential. It was 3 years for both residential and commercial in the original approval, and I would like to, rather than given that extended time frame, I would like to see that as 3 years for all developments. So I would like to propose that as an amendment.
Councillor Hunt. Seconded, yeah. Members, anybody want to talk to that?
I agree. If it's to be granted, it needs to be on a short leash and show that it can demonstrate it can meet those conditions.
Okay. Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, my reason for seconding it is it was a commercial site, and it's important that when we've got residential there that we do get places for people to work and bring it forward as soon as possible. I think even 2 years may have been good, but I think in fairness, especially as the other one was 3, it's better to have the 3 year to try and get that moving forward. And if the evidence is there that there was interest in that, there's no reason why the developer can't do that a bit quicker. And if it's not, then they have to come back and change that condition if they need to.
Okay, before we take a vote on that, Ian or Andy, please. Just on that one specific item.
Yeah, no, I mean, the comments are understood from members around the employment area. I suppose part of the challenge as well is because they're not necessarily looking at kind of one developer coming in delivering the whole employment site. They're looking at multiple, potentially different operators delivering different parts. There is kind of some sense to increasing the number of years allowed for them to come in with RM, just to enable that exercise to take place rather than having to reapply at a later date if one small part of the commercial element doesn't come forward as quickly as the others. Ultimately led by kind of members, but obviously the way that's been worded and the way that's kind of been negotiated with the applicant to date has been on the basis to allow for that extra time. But yeah, I mean, it's obviously down to members to go to a vote on a particular course of action that they wish to take.
Okay, that is the proposal. That has been seconded. Those members in favour of that proposal, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Those against? Any abstentions? 1 abstention. So that is carried. Thank you. Councillor Bonney.
We're back to substantive, yeah?
We are.
Good, just checking. Good, excellent. Can I just check that we've got the condition about internal roads being adoptable standard?
Thank you, Councillor Bonner. We don't at the moment, but because typically, I suppose, when we're looking at reserve matters design, we would be looking at the design of the roads. But if you wished to have that added, then that is something we can do. We obviously can't require them to be adopted because that's a separate process.
No, but we need them built to the standard so that, and if you set it the parameters at outline, it's easy then when it comes to the detail, it comes forward with the correct design. So I would propose that as an amendment.
I'm happy to second that.
Okay, thank you.
Members in favour of that? Or anybody want to talk to it? In favour, that's unanimous. Thank you.
Right, okay. And the second one, if this is granted, I would like it that the Section 106 is negotiated within 6 months. And if it's not, it's to return to committee. And I propose that as an amendment.
6 months.
Yes.
Let's think about that.
Well, we've got heads of terms here, and it's not beyond the wit of man to do something quite rapidly. And what we don't want is a repeat of what we've got elsewhere.
I'm looking further ahead, Councillor Bonney, as to where or what this council might look like, and I think that's wholly agreeable.
Yeah.
Councillor Hunt and then Councillor Speed.
Can we just hear that wording again? Yeah.
The Section 106 must be completed and signed within 6 months. Failure to do so means it returns to committee.
Thank you. That's better because I think it didn't say signed last time.
Signed.
So that is
Sorry,
completed.
correct.
Signed is the key word.
Signed,
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Speed. On a similar vein?
I wasn't sure if that had been seconded.
It has been seconded,
Okay, I was going
from
to
the
second
guy
it.
sitting here,
Because I think these Section 1 agreements are taking far too long, and we really have to tighten up on this and get this thing sorted and get on with it.
Before we take a vote on that, Ian.
Thanks, Chairman. Section 106 is a complex. From some of the Section 106s that we've been dealing with, it's not for the want of the applicants want to try and that it's taking more than 6 months, and so the delays are at least often our issue. Not the applicants are normally the ones that are chomping at the bit to get them done. It seems somewhat harsh on an applicant that's pushing and haranguing us to get them done quicker to then cause them the headache of having to come back to a planning committee for no material gain, and it could also result in this one having to be prioritised over others, which councillors might also wish to see done first.
If I may, Chair.
Of course.
I think it is entirely within our gift as committee decision makers. If we have other parties, the NHS, KCC, etc., who are dragging their heels, then that needs to be made public. And that's the only way to do it, is to bring it back to committee. I'm sure the applicants want to resolve this as quickly as possible, but from a council perspective, that isn't a valid permission until there is blood on the paper signed. And that is the key for us.
Yeah, we would accept Quink as
Quink,
well.
maybe, not
Yeah.
Invisible Ink.
No, that has been proposed and seconded and spoken to. Those in favour, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Are we there? We are. So, the proposal is to approve with Councillor Ben Martin. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I did raise before we got to the first.
I did see your name. I've even written it down.
So
So my mistake. Sorry.
that's all right. So I've already had an answer to this via email, but I think it's important that we get it in public as well, given that the town council representative mentioned exactly the same bits in their statement.
So you're going to answer your question.
I'm actually going to ask it, let the officer answer it, but the town council once again suggested that there are issues regarding the pedestrian access, and in particular ZF18 between the site running north through the Abbey School and across the A2. Can you confirm that there is indeed plans for the footpath to be upgraded and made hard standing, and for the crossing point that the town council requested?
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Andy.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Yes, there's money that Casey Prayer requested towards improving the southern end of ZF18. There's money already allocated to the improvement of an existing muddy part of ZF18 that's slightly further up towards Abbey School, and then £50,000 is also to be secured as part of the 106 towards sustainable transport improvements, including that crossing over the A2. Thank you.
Happy? Grand. Right, those in favour of the proposal. Officers, do you have a true record of the 4 additional items? For clarity, just...
I had 3. So it's amending condition for both elements to be 3 years for reserve matters.
Yep.
Adoptable highways.
Yes.
Built to adoptable standard. 106 to come back within 6 months or return to committee. What's the 4th?
Just checking. There's only 3. Didn't want you making any up, Ian. Yeah. Members, those in favour of that, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Those against? 1. That therefore is carried. Thank you very much. Councillor Hunt.
Can we just request as a committee to officers to do that generally with adoptable standards on all these major sites? Because if we keep asking for it every meeting, if we can just send it now back to officers and so they're aware that that could be done on every one.
I think that's a very good point to make, Councillor Hunt, and happy if that's your proposal. Yeah, second that. Members?
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you very much. I'm sure the officers will take that on board. Thank you very much. Right. Item 2.2. We have guest speakers. Can I first ask Mr. Danny Nicholson, please? Good evening, Mr. Nicholson. Yep. Not quite as hot now, but when you are seated and comfortable, press the button in front of you with the microphone and your 3 minutes will start.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. So I am a local resident and I oppose this application. The focus of my criticism is centred squarely on the Council's Planning Committee report. I find it contradictory, it's poorly reasoned, and I find it completely self-serving. Let me begin with the most important statement in the entire report. This site is not suitable. This is a fact not written by me, not by residents, but by Swale Borough Council itself. This is what the council openly acknowledge and document in the Housing and Economic Land Availability Assessment Report, and again acknowledge in section 7.2.24 of the Planning Committee report. Yet here today, the same very council that has opposed this site for over a decade now sits before us recommending permanent development of the site. A site that they have refused multiple times, a site inspectors have repeatedly found to cause significant harm, to be highly visible and discordant with the setting and the countryside. A site where permanent permission has been explicitly rejected by multiple planning inspectors. But suddenly now, today, this site is apparently acceptable, even though there has been zero beneficial change in the circumstances. And why? Why the U-turn? Well, I believe the answer sits right there again in paragraph 7.2.4. It's the fact that the council has failed to identify enough pitches to meet demand. So what do? They reach for the quickest, the laziest, and the most convenient solution by attempting to make an unsuitable site permanent, so they can continue to massage their statistics and attempt to make their failure to find suitable sites disappear. And not just that, they also propose to double the capacity of the site. Double. Again, simply to inflate their pitch supply at the stroke of a pen. Can you believe that? Because I still struggle to. And the consequences? Additional cost to the landscape, to the environment, to the integrity of the planning system, and frankly, a cost to the credibility of Swale Borough Council. The case officer even admits that the proposed development will be even worse than what is presently permitted. Paragraph 7.3.6 could not be clearer, that doubling the number of caravans means the harms will be even greater than the previously deemed unacceptable level. Greater harm, yet they still recommend the approval. To me, this is planning logic turned on its head. This recommendation is not merely wrong, it's extraordinary, unjustifiable, and a U-turn that contradicts everything that Swale has said, done, enforced, defended, and appealed for more than a decade. The site is unsuitable, the harm is unacceptable, and now, because the council has backed itself in a corner, the development is being dressed up as a legitimate proposal. It isn't, it never was, and it should never be granted permanent permission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nicholson. Yeah, don't forget your bag.
Cheers.
Our second speaker is Mr. Simon McKay, please. Good evening, Mr. McKay. Take the chair, please. As soon as you're comfortable and ready, press the button and you'll be allowed an equally flexible 3 minutes. Thank you.
I'll do my best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman and members. This application has been subject to considerable discussion and negotiation with officers. Members will note that the officer report is thorough and detailed. Rightly so, especially considering the previous appeal history of the site. However, members should also note that previous applications were determined behind a very different policy landscape. Fundamentally, as pointed out in the report, there is a significant uplift in need. It is correct for officers to conclude that there would be landscape harm through the retention of the site. But crucially, this harm has to be balanced against the need for sites. This need is discussed in paragraph 7.2.23 and then obviously onto the following paragraph as my previous speaker alluded to. It's important that members bear in mind that the conclusion under the NPPF, that paragraph 11D of the NPPF is engaged in what we now call the tilted balance. It is a significant consideration for the Council should this application be refused. The report goes on to consider visual impact, highways, biodiversity and flood risk. These are all discussed at length in the report. And when the harms are assessed against the benefits, the report, in my view, rightly concludes that permission cannot reasonably be withheld, though I do appreciate it is a balancing exercise in this case. This is a stance also taken by inspectors at appeals, in my personal experience. We also need to bear in mind that this need is likely to increase further over the next couple of years with the further widening of the definition of gypsies and travellers to include people of nomadic habit. The report goes on to detail a list of conditions, a long list, and rightly so again, and it goes back to the government guidance that should the identified harms be mitigated suitably by the use of conditions, that permission should not reasonably be withheld. I consider them appropriate in scope to secure any additional landscape benefits, for example, in particular. And with that, Chairman and members, I respectfully ask the committee to approve the application. Thank you.
Mr. Mackay, thank you very much indeed. Christian, do we have an update on the application, please?
Thank you, Chairman. No updates from me, but slides are available if required. Thank you.
I'm sure they will. Thank you. Right, members, I shall move the officer recommendation to approve reference number 25-50 2451-full. Is that seconded? Choice of two. Councillor Winklis, I'll take your second as it was higher. Thank you. Yeah, just a bit. Right, members. In a similar vein, I just again want to draw your attention to the planning history because it is important. That's items 21, 22, 23. And I suppose it would be prudent just to reflect on some of the inspector's comments, because I think they're important as well. Whilst I have the microphone, I think it's also important to recognise that from my position, I do not agree that our professional planning team make lazy decisions. Just to make that clear. Right. Any speakers, please? Councillor Thompson. Can you use your microphone, please? Yep.
Couldn't find it here on that time. How many were static units and how many were mobile units in this application? And how many are currently on site? And then, yeah, just the relevance to what's accepted now and what's being proposed.
Christian.
Yes, thank you. So the most recent appeal that was allowed in 2022, that was for 8 plots, each with 2 touring caravans and 1 day room. What we now have is the same amount of plots, that being 8 but each with 2 touring caravans, 2 mobile homes, and 1 day room. So overall, there will be 16 additional caravans on site compared to the previous appeal. Thank you.
Yep, please.
Just with that in mind, there are 54 units on the site at the moment, so I'm just wondering how that works. How do they diminish or not? Or
Ian, please.
Chairman, there's none lawfully at the site at the moment. The permission expired in July 25. There was a temporary permission granted following the 19 application that lasted for 3 years. So the number of caravans at the site has fluctuated. None are there lawfully at the moment. The proposal, what the determination of this committee should be in respect to this application, which is for 32 caravans, 8 day rooms across 8 pitches.
Clear?
No.
No.
What's a day room? Sorry.
It's
Is it a shed?
Through Chairman, a day room is a sort of utility block for that most pitches will have caravans for many things, and then an ablutions block for others.
Have we got any photographs? Yes. If you've got a presentation, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Yes. So yeah, this is application for retention of the 8 Gypsy Traveller plots located along Spade Lane near Hartlip, and as mentioned earlier, it has previously benefited from temporary permissions allowed to appeal, the most recent of which has since lapsed since last summer. So the site itself is located in a flat area of land. It's bounded by the A2, Spade Lane, South Bush Lane, Misborough Lane. So here we have the site location plan here. One of it zoomed out so you can just see it in context with London Road to the north, and then slightly zoomed in as well. So just for context, here we have the previously approved site layout from the last appeal. So as you can see, there are 8 plots, each with 2 touring caravans and a day room. And what is currently being proposed is now for 8 plots still, but 2 touring caravans and 2 mobile homes and 1 day room. So overall an addition of 16 caravans, albeit shared within the 8 plots themselves. So in terms of photos, here is the site access from Spade Lane. Here we have a photo just showing 2 of the pitches in question. And here we have a number of photos which just sort of illustrates the visibility of the site from the adjacent streets of Spade Lane and South Bush Lane. So hopefully members can see that.
When were they taken?
3-4 hours ago.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
No, that's good. Thank you. Councillor Thompson, anything further?
If I can, with that, is there a restriction on use, as in for the caravans, but as in commercial use? Because what tends to happen is business starts to occur. And the problem with, as we were saying, it changing to nomadic lifestyle, a lot of people who've got nomadic lifestyle then won't end up living there because it isn't actually nomadic. So it's trying to understand what's static, what's nomadic, and then who's in control of those particular sites, so then someone can come in who is nomadic. Whereas what tends to happen is it tends to become fully static and then no one nomadic can enter. So I just wondered how we define that and how we control that.
Yes, thank you. So condition 6 contained within the officer report does prevent commercial activities to take place on the land, and this includes the storage of materials, and then condition 5 as well sort of limits commercial vehicles per pitch. also. In terms of sort of nomadic lifestyle, so that is a requirement under local plan policy DM10. So information was submitted with the application which demonstrates that they do live a nomadic lifestyle. But given the shortfall in our gypsy land supply position, there isn't a need to secure that explicitly by condition to an individual occupant, only that they comply more broadly with the definition of a gypsy traveller, and that is also secured separately by condition as well. Thank you.
Happy? You got your answers. Councillor Hunt, please.
Thank you. I think I've over the years seen a lot of gypsy and traveller sites, and it's actually good to have one come through as an application rather than just leaving it and going onto the site and doing what they want. So it's good to be able to have something come forward that we can condition and have more control over. So I'm pleased that it has come forward in that respect. The issue around the appeal and temporary agreement, I suppose to make it more simple, the inspector says that he gives it temporary until we sort things out, that we've got enough pitches. We haven't done that. It's come back to us. National policy says it should be approved. Simple as that, unfortunately. That is where we're at with it. It's exactly the same as housing. We have housing that we have to agree in places that we don't necessarily want to agree in, which usually wouldn't be acceptable. But when we don't have that supply, that's the position we're in, and that's where we are now. So the officer's report is right that it should be approved.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm quite torn over this one, to be honest. I agree with what Councillor Hunt said. We do need these sites as our gypsy traveller allocation is, I believe, at 1.9 years as it stands at the moment. So we are significantly short of gypsy and traveller sites. What gives me pause is the fact that last year there were 70 caravans on this site and we had to take enforcement action. And that there are still 54 unapproved caravans, mobile homes, whatever is there, when they should have been vacated when the permission ran out last year. So we have some issue of the residents, if you like to call them, of this site, the gypsies, travellers, whoever are dwelling there, of ignoring the planning conditions, that there should only be X amount of mobile homes, X amount of mobile caravans, etc. This is what gives me pause over this application. I wonder whether a site visit might be useful in this particular case.
I'm going to say hold that thought. Okay. Only reason I've got 3 more speakers. So I'll take those speakers first, and then if you've changed your mind, then you can wave. If not, I'll come back to you. Councillor Winklis, then Councillor Marchington.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at the actual photos of the site, it appears to me that it is being well kept. It's tidy. And also following up from Councillor Hunt's, what he said just now, we basically need more traveller sites. We haven't got enough. As someone representing Milton Regis Ward had big issues in Milton last year where travellers were coming in, blah, 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 because there's not enough allocation of sites. At the moment, I am tending to go with the officer for approval, but I will listen to the rest of the debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Winklis. Councillor Marchington and then Councillor Kavanagh, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. They've been edging on my subject. I used to know that the application, the number of sites. It was used to be about 89, but I'm going back a lot of years. What's the current allocation we're supposed to have in Swale, and what are we have, and what do we have at the moment? Are we over or under?
Do we have that figure?
Yes, thank you. So the most recent Gypsy and Traveller and Travelling Show Person accommodation assessment, that was finalised in December 2023, which identified a shortfall of 114 pitches for the borough between 2022 to 23 to 2037 to 28. That's specifically 80 pitches in the short term and 34 pitches in the long. We have a year supply of only 1.3 years, and that is down from 3.5 at the time of the last appeal as well. So it's effectively got worse.
So it's all looking good. Thank you.
Councillor Kavanagh, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I used to live in Quinton. High percentage of Gypsy and Travellers. We often had extra caravans turn up because people had got nowhere else to go. If we've got only a 1.3 year supply, and that I believe from your report, through the chair, includes these pitches, it would be even worse if we didn't allow it. Now, if an inspector has allowed it for 3 years, why is it okay for 3 years and now suddenly not? Clearly, people have had nowhere to go because they're still there. Where else will we put them? You know, people should have a home, and as Councillor Winklis has said, it looks clean and tidy. It looks as though they've got a little community there, away from people who maybe they don't get along with.
I wouldn't say that.
I can't see where we, just the same with housing, if we are short in the supply, I can't see how we can refuse it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Speed.
Thank you, Chairman. The reason this application has been referred to the committee is because Hartlip Parish Council submitted an objection and it was called in by Councillor Richard Palmer. I would like to know why neither of those are here to explain why they called it into the committee. I think if you call something in to committee, you should attend the committee to explain your reasons.
I totally concur, Councillor Speed. That was going to be part of my summing up. I'm extremely disappointed that Councillor Palmer has chosen not to come this evening. Perhaps he's exhausted from last night, but and I won't forgive him for that. But yeah, it is disappointing, and I concur. Councillor MacDonald, did I see your hand?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I just overheard a little while ago that there were 50 odd caravans on the site. Obviously, that's a matter for enforcement. And if we do register a particular number, then obviously that's got to be maintained. And we've then got a stronger position to actually, I would have thought, for the enforcement team to actually take action. I mean, I've got a comment on travellers. You know, if they're travellers, it's not very fair, but they could travel somewhere else, which is... but anyway, there is a site up beyond Faversham, isn't there, up the hill? And there were sites up there, but sometimes the various fractions don't get together. So at the moment, the officer has provided us with a specific number of caravans, and it should be made very clear that if it is approved, that that's the way to stick by it, and no extras. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Yeah, I'm sure the community are very well aware of all the sites within the borough. Those are at capacity and those that perhaps aren't. Do you want to speak? Councillor Thompson, please.
It was only a brief one. Is the one on Oak Lane, is that an official site, which is opposite? It's just on the other side of the A2. I just wondered if it is. That's right.
We're just checking. Councillor Bonney, do you want a question?
Yeah, I do remember some of the history of this site, and I think we previously went on a site visit. I think it's disappointing that there's an awful lot more caravans on site than we are looking to grant. So I think the predicament is that we grant and they're immediately in breach, which clearly there's been breaches before. I also think it seems to be an awful. I mean, the inspectors agreed previously about the harm to the landscape, and that actually, that if you try and landscape it, if you use something inappropriate like Leylander, you actually make more of an issue trying to hide it, or blend it in. It won't blend in. That's for starters. So what we've ended up with is a proposition where we've got a significantly higher number of fans on site, and a lot more hard landscaping, and that I think is really quite damaging. The other thing is, I suppose this is the question to the officers, is it is within our gift to say it's a temporary permission rather than a permanent one. Is that correct? We could change that.
Through you, Chairman. It's yes. The general direction towards temporary planning permissions is that you either grant one because it's needed for a temporary period only, or it's a trial. It's generally held that you don't grant subsequent temporary permissions, albeit there's been 3 here. It's a should rather than shall sort of role. It would be within your gift to do that, and what we'd come on to would probably address that if this recommendation were to fail, because that would be due practice if a application for permanent retention of the site were to fail, then we'd ask that you consider that as a second option. But the recommendation before you, for all the reasons that are set out, that it's approved on a permanent basis. In terms of the landscaping, you're right, and the last inspector did acknowledge that if you entirely tried to mask the site, then you'd be introducing landscaping that isn't akin with the landscaping in the surrounding area. There's, to my mind, a sliding scale of no landscaping, intense landscaping, or something in between, which doesn't entirely mask the development, which isn't what we should be trying to achieve anyway, but it would soften and provide a halfway house. In terms of Councillor Thompson's question, if you're referring to the ones that are just north of the railway line in Oak Lane, there's 9 authorised pitches there.
Okay. Councillor Kavanagh.
Sorry, Chairman, a quick question. Through the chair, are there more dwellings there at the moment than are applied for? And if that's the case, how are we going to know if we decide to grant planning permission that they will stick to what is allowed? Thank you.
Through you, Chairman, I can't say I've been encountered today or recently. I know Christian's been to the site. There were more. I think we was up to 70 at one point. It has reduced. Ultimately, that is true for any development of any type, where there's any sort of condition controlling any use that ongoes. In the same way that we trust that a shop closes at 11 o'clock at night when it's meant to, and if it doesn't, and a resident will tell us, and we'll go out and investigate it from an enforcement perspective. That's true here, albeit the enforcement might already need to be making that investigation. As I said to Councillor Thompson earlier, the lawful use at the site is no caravans because the permission lapsed. So yes, regardless of the number, whether it's 1, 2 or 50 odd, then at the moment it's unauthorised. It'd be illogical to take enforcement action in many cases where an application is pending. The application came in summer last year. It's many reasons why it's only before us now, but it would have been illogical to take any steps sooner than this. If permission was granted tonight, and there's more than caravans than that, then have no doubt that would be brought to our attention, and the planning investigations team would go and look at it. And if more are there, then we'd take enforcement or investigative action in the usual way, because at that point the benchmark would be 32.
Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're still biting your breath on that point, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, from the feeling I get in the room, there isn't an appetite for a site visit, so I will withdraw that suggestion.
Okay, we're a long way off from that, but
well, I mean, someone else can propose. And
yeah, cool. Okay.
If they wish to. I'm still having difficulty with this, but one of the things I would like to see, if this is approved, looking at the conditions, on page 125, number 8, it says any trees and that planted. I have read through this and I can't see anything. I'd like to see, in addition to any landscaping, that it is native species only, not Leylandi or any form of conifer. If that's seconded.
Yeah, forgive me, but I think part of the standard conditions say that it's native and predominantly berry-bearing bushes. Is that correct?
It's a very commonly imposed condition, and there is a reference, I believe, in one of the policies to require that. There's been a couple of incidents lately where we've accepted through amendments non-native landscaping where it's acceptable for other reasons. There are instances where it can still be visually acceptable and achieve higher biodiversity benefits. So we have approved it in a couple of instances, non-native but suitable non-native, not that any landscaping would be subject to discussion. We review it with our relevant colleagues that advise.
Yep. Councillor Bonney.
Yeah, I think my concern is about sort of ramping up the density on site, as well as the issue of the, hard landscaping versus soft landscaping. That really is the crux of the problem, I think, for me. And that we know there's been historically an issue with trying to enforce. And it looks like we're just heading into that abyss again, quite frankly. Normally when you talk about the issue with the density of having so many vans there and mobile homes is actually you could be creating a problem where with far too much, and that then has an impact on the rural area, the rural lane, but the neighbours, etc., because we're piling in more development than was previously there and has been previously allowed. Thank you.
Okay. I see no more. Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you very much for letting us come back, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, 4/8 of 32, so 32 vehicles of one sort or another is the absolute maximum. And my view is that the site owner, whoever it is, needs to take responsibility for maintaining the site. And if there's 50-something there, then the site owner is actually responsible. So if we grant planning for the particular number, 4/8 of 32, have I got my maths right?
I think it's 2 mobile, 2 touring plus 2 day rooms.
Oh, sorry, I forgot the day rooms. Yeah. So another 8.
40 in total.
Yeah. So that's it really, and that should be really maintained and it's the site owner's responsibility. Yep. Thank you.
Totally understand. Councillor Thompson, you love this one.
I just wondered, because I'm trying to get my head around it all. Is there within the site when they're allocated? Because I don't know how it works. Is there a way that if you are nomadic or you're a traveller that you can contact to find out if there's a mobile space? Because this seems to be the problem I hit with people who are nomadic and travelling. There is no space because they become permanent. So I just wondered, how do we monitor that, and how do we make it publicly accessible or easily publicly accessible without pressure?
Whoa. I'm not conversant with the communication techniques of the Gypsy Traveller community. I'm sure they are. And I couldn't possibly comment, Councillor. I think that's pretty much outside the remit of this application, I would suggest. Yeah.
There's an often used difference between pitches such as this and then transit pitches. So transit pitches are there for real intermittent stays on travelling, and then pitches such as this need to be occupied by persons that meet the definition of gypsy or traveller, which includes nomadic lifestyle, or I believe it's settled due to educational health or grounds of old age. I don't believe that in the same way that we don't keep a register of who lives in houses and who stays in hotels. It's not relevant to the planning application to require there to be any type of network of communication of availability of pitches. There's not enough transit pitches. That's an even greater shortfall than what there is. There's very few of conventional pitches such as this.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. One of our neighbouring boroughs will find out this weekend that their village green is again taken over. So it's just one of those things. Right, I'm going to come back to Councillor Clark's point. I'm just conscious that this has been refused and then appealed and allowed for a temporary 3 years. Then application, refused, appealed, and another temporary 3 years. I think it would be beneficial to go and see it personally and understand why and what, particularly with the thoughts about trees and shrubs and bushes and how that may or may not impact upon the site as it is today. Exclude the point about they shouldn't be there at this moment in time. Exclude the point about there's more there than they were originally given a temporary approval for. I just think it would be beneficial for this committee to see it in the cold light of day. So you've withdrawn that, Councillor Clark. I shall now propose that.
And I will second.
Right. You're talking to a site visit, please.
Can it be that the landowner or manager of the site is there, that we can talk to them or not?
Okay, so how it works is the people that spoke this evening can go to that site meeting. They can gather whoever they want. And it doesn't matter how many people turn up. Everybody is allowed to speak at that meeting. Then that comes back to this meeting again, and those people that turned up at the site meeting, if they wanted to, could come back here again and speak, as could all of you. So it might well be a long drawn out process, but I'm just minded to say that this has been refused, approved, refused, approved, refused, approved. One way or t'other, we need to make a decision. And at what point would anybody, as I said at the start of this, an informed member of the public look at it and go, come on, you've got to do something with this. So, that has been proposed and seconded. Can I just see a show of hands for those in favour of a site visit? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4. Abstain? 1, 2. So we will go for a site visit. So no more communication on that this evening. Can we agree a date now?
Probably.
I don't want 25 dates given to us. We'll let the officers decide a date.
For you, Chairman, it probably need consultation with Democratic Services and other calendars, etc. If I could just say as well that as much as you've said, sorry, that anyone can visit the site and anyone can come to the site visit, of course, a landowner can always say that people might not, I mean, I'm sure they would, but we can't insist on access to land.
No,
we
no.
have some powers to do that, but not necessarily in this instance. But
What I'm hopeful
surely we
for, is the agent is still in the room, and I'm quietly confident the agent can negotiate with the residents there at the moment, and we can reach an agreement through the officers for an appropriate day, time, and suitable cups of tea ready for us. And coffee when we turn up. Right, so that is the decision. We will have a site meeting. Thank you very much indeed. Right, we now go back to item 1.1. So this is on page 9 of your agenda pack. Can we have the officer update and report, please?
Thank you, Chairman. No update. If you'd like an introduction to the item.
Always, please, Ian.
Yeah, sure. So, councillors will be fairly aware of HMOs. Most of them have been to the training. Most of them were at the full council meeting where this was brought. But forgive me, I'll tell Granny how to suck eggs in some ways. The permitted development rights allow for dwellings falling within use class C3 to change to small HMOs, which are use classes C4. That's for where there's not more than 6 residents. Larger HMOs need planning permission anyway. An Article 4 direction can restrict permitted development rights, and at the full council meeting on the 1st of October, a motion was passed for it to be presented to the relevant committee, which is the planning committee, to address the request to serve an Article 4 direction to control, to remove permitted development rights relating to the creation of HMOs from dwellings. Before you is a report which addresses all of the various considerations that we consider are applicable at this time. Particularly highlight at 2.13 and 2.14 that the NPPF states that where Article 4 directions should be based on robust evidence with as small an area as possible, and this is supported by the planning practice guidance, which says that harm has to be clearly identified and removal of permitted development rights strongly justified if considering a wide area. Anecdotally, I'd say that the government introduced permitted development rights because they consider that their developments are acceptable in all instances, and often they're fairly protective of them. In the assessment, we've addressed various matters which were raised at full council. These are set out at 4.6 of the report and include the amenity of an area, parking provision, refuse and storage, infrastructure and services, housing balance and family dwelling loss, and the living conditions of future occupiers. The report also sets out risks and benefits of serving an Article 4 direction. And then finally, it moves on to set out 5 options that are before you tonight. One is to serve an immediate HMO, Article 4, which would come into effect immediately. An alternative would be to serve a non-immediate HMO, where the paperwork is done and then the effect of it comes into force 12 months later. The reasoning for the difference is that is urgency, and where an immediate one is used, the council is liable for compensation if an application is refused that wouldn't have otherwise been required, or conditions are imposed on the planning permission that would not have otherwise been able to have been imposed. The option, another element is, like I said, that the guidance is that they're imposed on a smaller area as possible. So before you is an option to either impose it on a borough-wide basis, which is reflective of what the full motion the motion of the committee, full council salt, or on a more localised basis, which there's evidence before you around the spread and distribution of HMOs within the borough. There's an option set out about taking a combination approach where certain areas of the borough could be subject of a non-immediate Article 4, some areas could be the subject of a immediate Article 4. Two final options. One is to not serve an Article 4 direction at all, and the fifth one is to ask us to go and reconsider the evidence that we've put before you if you're not satisfied that it passes the test of robustness and the area isn't adequately justified. So they're the 5 options that are before you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Ian. Okay, formality. I'll move the officer recommendation. Item number 1.1. Is that seconded? Councillor Clark, thank you. Right. I will ask you a question, Ian. On 4.6, there are 7 items. Do you believe that the officers have sufficient evidence to nail all of those 7 items in order that the Secretary of State can make a decision?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm still on Spade Lane, bear with me. So we've addressed all of those 7 bullet points within the report. I should have said within my introduction that where we serve an Article 4 direction, we have to notify the Secretary of State and they have the option to amend it or revoke it. That's the gift of the Secretary of State. We've addressed all of those points. I wouldn't say that all of them give grounds to serve an Article 4, and the 3rd bullet point, which is refuge generation, is one that I've expanded upon in the report. The reason being that our refuse team and have the same standards for a small HMO as they do for a dwelling. There's no extra bins required, no extra bin storage needed, and respectfully say that the occupants of a HMO are just as liable to keep their bins in a good manner as residents of a dwelling in C3 use. So on that basis, we've not found that all of those areas would justify a HMO Article 4 being served. Ultimately, it's a view of the committee as to whether the tests that I've set out are met. We've certainly addressed all of those points. We don't consider that all of them are grounds to serve an Article 4, but they don't need to be. There just needs to be a harm that the Article 4 direction would address where it's proportionate to do so through an Article 4 direction.
Thank you, Ian. I'm referring to page 15 and the table 4.2. Respectful as I am to the residents of Abbey Ward and Watling Ward, the residents of Sheerness might have a different opinion as a major thing, and Sittingbourne, yeah. I don't want to waste anybody's time, but I think we need to be absolutely nailed on the potential impacts and effects of HMOs. I wouldn't want this to come back having not given it the full airing, if you get what I'm saying. I'm leaning towards Councillor Clark.
That's what you said.
Yeah, sorry to cut across you, Mr. Chairman. If we're looking at this in the round and the table you mentioned under 4.2 on page 15, my question firstly to Ian would be, in his opinion, would we have more of a chance of getting an inspection through the Secretary of State if we were to say, just off the top of my head, looking at the wards that are most affected, i.e. Homewood, Roman and Sheerness, could we make Article 4 orders for those three areas initially, and then revisit the other areas at some point in the future, as like it says in one of the points there under the combination? That's my question. Thank you.
I think I know where you're coming from, but then we'd have to have at least 2 bites of the cherry, wouldn't we? Ian? Yeah.
So the options that are set out at 5.1 are for you to consider the area as well as the immediacy of any Article 4. If I call it the Dartford approach as an example, is that anything north of the A2 is the subject of an immediate HMO. Anything south of the A2 is subject of a non-immediate HMO, Article 4, which kicks in after 12 months. Within the report, there's risks and benefits to all approaches. I have to say, you asked my opinion as to what would get past the Secretary of State. I've never served an Article 4 direction. I can't comment for the Secretary of State or what they might think. If you relate it to a condition that you put on a planning permission to say removing permitted development rights for dormer windows on extensions to houses, planning inspectors sitting in appeals will always tell us that we need to justify them robustly and need to come up with a reason. That was the experience on Tuesday for Baldwin Lane West when we tried to control one element of permitted development rights. And as set out in the NPPF, the NPPF says that there needs to be robust evidence, and the PPG says that harm has to be clearly identified and the removal of permitted development rights strongly justified if it's covering a wide area, borough-wide. I can't possibly advise what the Secretary of State opinion might be of this. That's not within my scope, but the NPPF does say that. And there are options. Other authorities in Kent serve them on specific areas related to specific wards, like you've said. That's the experience of Medway, where they served them on those wards that had the real highest number and most intense existence of HMOs. These are all options that are before you. I should say as well that table at 4.2 is 15, 16 of the boroughs. It's not wards. It's not all of them. All the others have got none.
Okay. The bit that's nagging me is the robustness of it, the robustness of our evidence. And to be brutal but fair, I can't see the robustness in this report. So I would request or suggest that this is deferred back until such a point there is robust information. Councillor Hunt, that's a proposal.
I agree, but it's full council that have agreed that we should put an Article 4 direction in place. If that's not going to be done at this time, and there's reasons why, I think that needs a report to full council to explain why that is.
Yep.
Because everyone's made a decision, it's come to us to be able to do it, and we're not going to be able to do it as a whole going by this. So it might need another report to come back and look in more detail, but it does need something, I think, to go to full council to give an explanation of the issues that we would come up against as a committee.
Accept that. Councillor Bonney, then Councillor Kavanagh.
Thank you. I mean, there's clearly an issue in Sheerness. I think the stats give you that. And I'm quite interested in what's at 4.16, as the motion highlighted the perception of connection between HMOs and antisocial behaviour. And I think it's quite shocking when you look at the crimes reported in Sheerness compared to other places at 2,621, and it's number one ranked in HMOs. And then you look at other places like West Downs, there's only 226 crimes and ranked 15th. So they're worlds apart, quite frankly. I think one of the issues around HMOs is the perception it has on the market, the housing market. And for us as a planning committee, we're trying to encourage development, but the right sort of development. And I think where there is a proliferation of HMOs, it starts to depress your residential flat market. It has a direct impact on those because traditionally they're houses that are broken up into bedroom units. That's why they're HMOs. Sometimes they're big houses, so in Woodstock, or they're not in town centres. But where you see that many HMOs, if you don't put this in now, you're almost allowing a horse to bolt because you put it in a later stage and you end up with a worse problem. And so I think it's clearly identified that Sittingbourne Town Centre, we're having a problem. And we know we have a problem around viability and Sheerness. And actually not doing anything, not putting this in place, trying to restrict this and push the other alternative options for development in our town centres will actually hold back our town centres and their viability going forward. So I do think actually there's some merit in doing this. There's possibly a risk around evidence. Is someone who's got a really small HMO really going to do something outlandish? I don't know, because they're not going to get their permission. You know, these tend to be, they're a different operational model than residential development flats, for example. It's a different sort of operator. I do think we probably should, if we want our town centres to thrive, we've got to have lots of different offers. HMOs are part of the mix, I have to admit. When I was a student, I lived in an HMO, so I understand the market. But it also does have an impact on the community and how the community perceives HMOs, and the people that live in them often quite transient. You know, they don't sort of take part in the community activities, and you kind of lose that. So that is part of the reason why you'd want to maybe clamp down on them using an Article 4. So I'd say actually, if we can, I would push that we do something. We have been asked by full council. If the evidence is weak, then we can, you know, we'll feed that back to council, but say that we've done our best.
Yeah, thank you. Joanne.
Thank you, Chairman. I've just looked back at the remit, the mandate that was given to us by full council, which was to commence the process of introducing the Article 4. I think if members were to decide that we needed more evidence, that falls under the remit of commencing the process. So I don't think we would need to go back at that point in time. I think that is within this committee's gift to decide to do that. Thank you.
Councillor Kavanagh.
Thank you, Chairman. I think if I remember rightly, it was Queenborough that was raised at full council, possibly by Councillor Whiting. Now, if we look at the numbers, Queenborough doesn't figure. Maybe the number of rooms might be more relevant. Now, I'm not sure about this at all. I read it and I thought, do I understand all this? I still don't. But from what I can gather, possibly if we had the whole borough, it would be too big and thrown out. So if we don't know what we want, I can't see how we're ready to make a decision. So I would say defer.
Thank you. Oh, 3. Councillor Ben Martin, Councillor MacDonald, then Councillor Marchington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would concur with Councillor Kavanagh on that, and I actually think that when we're looking at the evidence and based on what we've got in front of us at the moment, I don't think we're going to get to a position where we could do the whole borough. Dare I say it, the east of the borough doesn't seem to have a problem. So therefore, putting an Article 4 in place there is probably not going to be defendable. So when we're looking for that evidence, the west of the borough is the beneficiary.
Councillor MacDonald.
Yes, I'll probably have to declare a non-pecuniary interest as a member of Sheerness Town Council. But with regard to Sheerness, is it possible for us to, I mean, I can take a visual look from outside. Is it possible for us to have perhaps on a blue paper the addresses which are, because I know 1 or 2 of them, but I'd like to have a quick scan of the addresses which are actually HMOs or proposed HMOs. Thank you.
Is that something you could request through your town council as a town councillor?
Yeah, that's possible. But I was just thinking, as a member of this council, I'd like to, I can, in my own time, I can go and have a look and see whether they're properly being maintained again by the from the outside.
Yeah,
from the owners, because I think they've got a responsibility. Quite honestly, thank you.
I don't know the legal implications of that. Is that something that is possible?
Yeah, we'd have to seek opinion from data protection and
albeit on blue paper, Councillor MacDonald. I'm just concerned what benefit that will be for us as a committee rather than you as a local councillor.
I can report back to the committee. That's the idea. Yeah.
Okay. Your point's been noted. Councillor Marchington.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Regarding the HMOs, they've been around a very long time, as you all know. I know them myself. I was married at 18 on apprentice pay, and I lived in one. And I know all about the one-room flat that was just the wall knocked out and just the door that opened straight into the street, and the shared toilet was an outside one. So that's where I came from originally.
Is that an interest you're declaring, Councillor
Marshall? But I'm going to say university towns are full of them, as Monique knows. And often there's more than 10 people sharing a house, and that's been a sort of thing that's gone on for years. There's never been a problem anywhere, very rarely. But recently, it's a different type of use. A lot of these are big business people that are buying houses and converting them from away, and they own several of them, and it's becoming more and more. And the ones in Queenborough, we've got one that was done well, retained all the conservation things, took window frames out, repaired them, put the same windows back. But others, they're all knocking all the walls out. And I did have one incident where they knocked through into the neighbours. Actually knocked a wall straight into their stairs. Where they've just come in, just try and gain 3 inches in the width of the house. They'd take every single bit of plaster right back to the brick. Although I didn't realise that the house was only a single brick between the 2 houses. And that's so. And I got called out to that, to a crying lady laying in the street. It was a very bad incident, and it did get a little bit violent between me and the lads working in there, the big lads and all. But I wouldn't leave premises. I wanted to know, because I wanted to see their insurance and stuff like that, and who owned it, and I did eventually get contact. But that's just. But some of it is getting very nasty, and it's being run by very nasty people. So I'm all for strict control. That's the point.
Thank you, Councillor Marchington. I don't condone violent activity with councillors and owners of HMOs, but it's just between you and I'll take you in a moment, Councillor Bonney. Councillor Hunt.
Just wondering, I think it should be deferred for more detail, but it's not simple, but there's a simple thing that why are they HMOs? They're cheaper areas with large properties. That should be sort of, as I say, quite easy for officers to know where those areas are. But it's if you've got a ward that's got a load of bungalows, we're not going to have HMOs there, so you can pretty much get rid of those areas. But it must be a way that we know the sort of sizing of houses and where is most likely, and that is probably from evidence of this is the sort of area that could likely to have HMOs. The concern I've got is if we do pick out a few areas, there could be another area that go, actually, yeah, we've got this issue here, but the ward next door that has got big properties and are cheaper, we can go there instead because they haven't done it in that area. So if we can have those details, then that would be much better.
Yeah, it's a good point, Councillor. I'm sure all of us regularly walk our wards and see the properties with flat 1, flat 2, flat 3, flat 4, flat 5. So we're very aware of that, or should be within our own wards. Councillor Bonney.
So a couple of things to point out. Obviously, we're talking about Article 4, which is completely separate to people knocking 10 barrels out of a building. And Councillor Marchington, that is a Party Wall Act issue, and that has separate legislation, and that's, you call an emergency surveyor out and get that resolved. That's outside of this remit, and so an Article 4 won't ever resolve that. But I think something around the housing plan viability assessment, there'll be stuff in there about values. We've got the heat maps from our local plan evidence, etc. We've got the officer's report here. It is pretty detailed. The HMOs rank. So if you look on 4.16, they've ranked how many from, worst, which is obviously Sheerness there, has got a rank of 1. And Queenborough Queenborough and Halfway they're ranked 5th. So, you can see it tells you exactly how many are there. So we can actually draw a line and say, actually, we'll take out. The problem with Sittingbourne is it's broken up into so many wards, when we will know that there'll be part of one ward and a neighbouring ward may not have an issue. So I think it's probably Sittingbourne and Sheerness and, a couple of other places that might need it. But then we could review it periodically. So it could come back on an annual basis to say, what have we seen over the last year? And do we think we have a problem? So, I'm kind of, you can kick the can down the road, but at some point you've got to do something. Bearing in mind, we're going to go into Reg 19 as well. I think this is part of our work on a local plan in providing the different housing mixes. And as I said, we don't want to undermine our own markets, Sittingbourne and Sheerness. And as you say, it's where the values are low and the properties are large.
Yeah, I agree. However, I think we do have now evidence that this committee has taken initial steps. We are discussing it, but I think paying respect to full council, I don't want to be part of a committee that's kicking that can, as you eloquently say, for the sake of gathering more evidence. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Looking at these tables, my ward ranks 3, so it's quite low down in the pecking order, or quite high up in the pecking order, which way you look at it. I'm not unsympathetic to HMOs. There are a couple of good ones in my ward, some very, very high standard, which attracts, obviously, the higher rental yields and, perhaps, dare I say it, a better quality of tenant. But there are a couple, well, several, in fact, that have caused me no end of problems over the last 2 years or so. And I understand what Councillor Bonney says about party wall agreements and so on and so forth, but you do get these rogue operators come in, as I did on one of my properties, where they ripped the roof off their property and ripped half the roof off the next door property as well. and then the dividing wall between the two houses collapsed. And an elderly lady of 80-something lived in that house. So there are problems with rogue developers. But whilst I might like to look at specific wards, I think has been said, it may be worthwhile deferring for more information and to try and make this more robust before it goes anywhere near the Secretary of State. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. I believe full council would respect that decision to make it more robust in that term. Coming back to your comments on rogue HMO operators, the same could be said for a housing estate of £1 million houses, and you get one rogue family moves in, and the same with, as we heard earlier this evening, Gypsy Travellers. We have Gypsy Traveller sites that are run fantastically, and then we have some that aren't. So we just need to be careful with that. So that is the proposal to defer. That has been seconded. Those in favour to defer, please show. How long for? How long? Right, hands down. Sorry. Ian and Joanne, in your professional capacity, if I was to say 2 months, so we see it in June. Is that okay? Members happy? Right, so the deferment is until the June meeting. Members, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Ian. That's a fight at one of your HMOs, Simon. Right. Last item, members, please. Agenda item number 8. These are the part 5s. You'll see on page 129 to 131, there's a very brief summary. If anybody wants to speak to any of those items. Ian, anything you want to add before we get in? No, we're not deferring this one. 5.1. Appeal is not determined. It's frustrating. It neither is nor it isn't. So, yeah, it's difficult to put a note on that. Ian, go on. You've got the wordage.
Never seen it before.
No.
That don't mean a lot. So it's, when an applicant submits an application, they have to submit complete an ownership certificate, so they own all the land, or that they've notified all the people that do. And in fairness, the inspector says that the applicant proceeded unknowingly and not intentionally, misleadingly in any way, and I should stress that. But through the application was refused. When it went to appeal, the applicant was advancing a Section 106 agreement, and through the checks as part of that, you establish who owns the land. And in this case, a parcel, I believe a fairly small parcel of land, was found to be in unknown ownership, and the correct ownership certificate and the correct publicity connected to the ownership certificate hadn't been done. So that puts the inspector in a position, I gather, where they can say, no harm done, let's crack on. Or someone could have been prejudiced by not knowing that an application had been submitted on their land. The only reason for doing the ownership certificates is to give people the chance to comment. You don't need to own the land, it's just to give people the scope to be able to comment. And so in this case, where the inspector found that someone could have been prejudiced, an unknown person, because the landowner is genuinely still unknown, and it's not appearing in land registry or anything else, the inspectors turned it away.
Like you, Councillor Bonnie, I've never seen that before. 5.2, Dunkirk. Enforcement notice upheld. Good decision, I would say. 5.3, Orchard View in Eastling, appeal dismissed. I just look at, do you want to speak it? Yeah, I'm just looking at the second paragraph. The inspector found that the proposal would unacceptably harm the character and appearance of the countryside and would fail to conserve and enhance the natural beauty of the national landscape. I just find that a little bit galling, but there we go. No further comments? Cool. And lastly, 5.4, Pigeon Farm. Enforcement notice upheld. Only thing again I would say, as I do, is the commentary submitted by the inspectorate, a dozen or so pages. Rip it out of your pack, put a couple of holes in it and stick it in your binder, because it does provide some good lineage for future decision making. Right, bang on the hour of 9 o'clock. Thank you very much indeed for your participation. Thank you, officers. Thank you, Philippa. Have a good, safe journey home and formally close the meeting. Thank you very much.